Hi, I'm Amy Lee, and welcome to Cult Confessional, the locker room diary of a girl who's just trying to be the hottest, richest, smartest version of herself, and the situationships, obstacles, and men who somehow just keep getting in the way. I previously ran a 7-figure digital marketing agency for the last 8 years, which I sold at the end of last financial year, and now I am pursuing a full-time role in my content creation side hustle, which is blogging about healthy, wholesome recipes. It was always very aspirational and polished content, and I thought now I would give you guys some insight into my personal life. I don't typically share my family, relationships, friendships, or any side of my even personal working life as well. I kept it very vanilla, straightforward, health, nutrition, recipe content. And I have done that for so many years, I think 10 years now, absolutely ages. And I felt like it was time to mix it up and share a bit of piece of me with you guys that I think that you would find a lot of entertainment, but also valuable life lessons. So, how I actually got this idea was I was catching up with a very successful podcast producer, a good friend of mine here in Australia, and I was pitching to him this whole other idea about another podcast I had, which was called Beauty, Brains, and Bank. And it was all about, again, becoming the hottest, smartest, richest version of yourself, but very like straightforward, more digestible, science-based content. He was listening to it, and it was a walking meeting, and we walked 14,000 steps talking about it. He was like, yeah, like this could work, but he didn't seem that enthused about it. Then, just as we were saying bye after a 2.5 hour meeting, I was like to him, I actually had this other really silly idea. It will probably get me cancelled and it's stupid. And he was like, nah, just tell me. I said, well, this is actually a bit inspired by my close friend's story, where I used to run a segment called Fuckboys Exposed, and I'd basically do pieces to camera talking about the cooked shit that fuckboys did to me, said to me, the messages they'd send to obviously do their end goal, which is usually to try and get you in bed. I'd post screenshots, I'd post like WhatsApp conversations, and it would go off on my close friend's story. And I said this for about 30 seconds, and he immediately said, Amy, scrap the other idea. This is your podcast. And he was laughing so much. I said, oh, I don't know. Like, I just feel like I could get cancelled for this. I have this fear of getting cancelled and offending people because I really don't want to do that. I've always, done a very polished, wholesome content. He said, don't be afraid. I ended up telling him some fuckboy stories of mine, and he just loved it. And I saw the light in his eyes and energy, and that's what inspired me to come on here today and do something completely different. I must admit, I don't even know if I'm going to post this as I'm saying this, and I'm absolutely shitting myself, but here we are. So, how this story came about was I used to run a lot of PR events back in my marketing agency days, and I actually ran my own PR event for the launch of my cookbook, Nourishing 5, which was a bestseller. This was many years ago. And I was running a healthy, wholesome brunch with recipes from the cookbook, as well as like a Pilates class that was all pink themed. It was all organic, very wholesome, and just, yeah, very innocent. I, of course, was running my secret fuckboy exposed close friend story series. And as part of the PR strategy, I invited a lot of reality TV stars who were like hot at the time to the party. And then I invited paparazzi to attend to photograph them and what they were doing on their weekend or whatever, because, I'm a pleb. I'm not good enough to have paparazzi there just to capture me. I needed like to leverage the exposure of these reality TV stars who obviously everybody loves, to watch them and know like what's going on in their lives. So I invited my usual paparazzi contact that I knew, and we had a great relationship. He'd come to a lot of my other events and supported them and given a lot of exposure. In the lead up to my cookbook launch, I had a phone call with him, and we just kind of like connected further, had a nice chat, and just deepened the rapport more. And yeah, really rate him as a human. Like, it was nothing creepy at all. Super lovely guy. Definitely rate him highly. So nothing weird there. And then I invited this other paparazzi. He was fine. I was explaining to him, like, this is an organic, healthy morning where we're going to do some movement, a workout, and have it followed by brunch with recipes from my healthy cookbook. So, yeah, very wholesome. I need to emphasize. And he somehow finds me on Instagram and decides to send me a DM that was like, "Oi, I feel like we vibed. Like, how about we go get a beer?" Obviously, I was like, "Oh, I just told you about my healthy, non-alcoholic cookbook, and now you're inviting me for a beer." And I just thought this was absolutely hilarious. So, of course, I screenshotted it and posted it on my close friends story. And it was like probably one of the most successful episodes, and it was going off in my DMs, and all my friends were laughing and thinking it was hilarious. Also, by this point, I'd actually gotten drunk off the fame of my close friend story. And I had actually added more people than my actual close friends circle. So there was like 100 people in there of people that I just met like maybe once at events that I liked and got along with. And, people I honestly didn't really know, but just liked. So their red flag, there was a bunch of people in there who I wasn't close with. I actually had a reality TV star in there at the time, and she screenshotted this story. Yes. And she sent it to the paparazzi that I actually got along with really well and said, "Oh my God, haha, is this you?" And then he immediately called me and was like,
"Oh my God, Amy, like, what the fuck is this? Like, are you bitching about me behind my back? Like, I'm so confused right now. Like, all I've done is try to help you in your career, and you've turned around and you've done this. Like, I'm so confused."
and I was like, "Oh my God, no." Like, I did this massive damage control, and in the end, I managed to salvage our working relationship. But this obviously made me look incredibly professional. And I know it is. Like, I was young at the time. I just was so scarred that I never ran the segment again. But I would think about it daily, and I miss it so much. And I went onto my phone and I was like, "Guys, I have to stop this fuckboys exposed segment because I've been outed and a disaster's happened." And yeah, it was very sad. It was like, having a funeral for something that you like loved and cherished. Yeah, so that's the story I told the podcast producer. He loved it, and here I am. So this isn't a podcast, nor is it some kind of polished show, and it's definitely not me pretending I'll have my life together, because clearly I don't. This is a confessional space for the glow up era that nobody talks about. The messy middle where you're trying to level up your body, mind, money, and self-respect while still being very human along the way. I created Cult Confessional because I felt like there was a real gap between the polished wellness content that we were currently constantly being fed and the real conversations we're actually having behind closed doors. About dating fatigue, self-ambition, self-worth, money, loneliness, discipline, ego, healing, and the quiet pressure to prove that you're doing better than last year, you're doing better than your ex, and you're doing better than the version of you that accepted less. It's about telling the truth while you're still becoming her or him. If you're an ambitious human who wants to feel less alone, laugh at your past self, and build a better future without shaming where you came from, then you're in the right place. This is the conversation we're not supposed to have out loud. So let's start.